Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it might be, wherever you are. We're back again. The internet has been fixed at my humble abode, thus we're back. We hope to not have another case like we had last week, or earlier this week, when the stream just died on us. Turns out somebody cut 2 fiber cables. It took 288 splices to put it back together. So I didn't have internet for like 6 hours.
That was a major party pooper, my friend. You know,
I know.
We're watching Ignite. We're even dressed for the occasion, and then
I know. Bolt said that he expected us in suits again today, and I was going to go put mine on, but I was tired. So
also
no
Javier
today.
would feel underdressed if we were just to turn up with suits
right.
on.
I would be like, I didn't get the memo, so it's weird.
Javier is actually wearing the most amazing clothes today because, as you'll notice, it moves with him.
Yeah,
That's right.
So it's even better. So, good morning, Javier.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm not too bad. I'm a little tired. My youngest has a sinus infection. So he was up. He's been up the past 2 nights, and but they took him to the doctor. My wife took him to the doctor.
Someone, I don't know who.
someone.
I was waiting for the internet to come back on before I could do anything.
And the poor kid. I mean, he's got a sinus infection. I mean, they didn't know that yet, but they said they had to test for COVID and for the flu. And the poor kid had to have two nasal swabs or whatever, like sinus swabs.
No fun.
And I guess yeah, she said he did him like a champ, but he doesn't have COVID, and he doesn't have the flu, so I guess that's a good thing. So at least now he's back on the road to feeling better and maybe actually going back to sleep. Poor baby. So I'm dragging a little today, but that's okay because it's Friday and it's supposed to be warm today, so I'm not going to.
And we only have meetings until 5 p.m., so you're good.
Yeah, I mean,
right,
nothing. It's like we were talking to our boss the other day, like, maybe we should start doing like 410s or whatever, and it's like, well, I think we already do 510s as it is.
We're already doing 5 yeah.
I don't know how we're gonna make it any better, but
I remember when I used to have a part-time job too, only 50 hours. That's a bad joke. It's an old joke.
I mean, in saying that, we have really good work-life balance in terms of the division and the team. We are very conscious about the hours that we're putting in. It's just we're having too much fun to stop doing it.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, Ignite wrapped up yesterday, and
It did.
there were a bunch of announcements, which we'll get to, I guess, here in a minute. I don't know if Bolt is trolling us or not, but he's like, I'm so excited about all the things that GA'd for B2C, and I'm like racking my brain, like, what all GA'd for B2C this week? I know external identities GA'd, but I'm trying to think of what else came out for B2C, and now I can't remember. So, but Christos, what kind of news you got for us today?
The news segment, right? We should have a proper transition thing here for us, but let's start with music and some kind of transition. We're working on that. Trust us. Things are coming. Things are happening. But we'll start with a first cyber attack or somebody getting compromised. This is Casalo, I don't know. Casalo, probably. A Philippines-based company that got hacked 2 weeks ago. A few 100,000 accounts were compromised. And even though they said their account and passwords have not been compromised, the fact that they are saying our encryption implementation ensures that no customer data were compromised, I don't know. It makes me feel a little bit icky about that. So
I mean, there's just got to be penalties. I mean, I don't know. Equifax lost hundreds of millions of people's data, and what did I get? I got like a year of free Equifax credit monitoring. I'm like, no. I think you guys have done enough. Like, I don't think I want
more.
that. And then
another opportunity to
This week I was talking to somebody, and they were like, they had like a really hard line in the sand about like, we can't use implicit flow. We have to use auth code flow. And I'm like, okay, well, you're on a mobile device, so that's going to be a little bit difficult. Like, how are you doing it? And they're like, well, we put the client secret on the mobile device. And it was like, oh my God, no, please.
Kaboom.
Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Well, we can't use implicit. It's insecure. I'm like, let me tell you something about insecurity. there's a certain thing that's guaranteed. There's a certain thing that's guaranteed to be insecure, and that is when a secret no longer is a secret. So, hey Bolt, and Bolt just arrived in the chat. Hey Bolt, we actually talked about you a few times because you said
Yes.
you implied that there were a bunch of B2C announcements this week, and I can't find them. So I wasn't entirely sure if you were trolling us or if you were serious. So if you know what they are, you need to tell us what they are. Anyway,
Yes.
so so I guess if you're in the Philippines and you've used Cashalo or Cash-alo, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, it's fine.
You should probably get that checked out.
I think that people have lowered their expectations of us pronouncing things the right way in this show. So,
Or they set expectations.
I mean, I don't even know if they had any expectations because right now we're butchering every single name.
Yeah.
Moving on to some announcements. So we talked about Ignite this week. We're not going to have time to cover everything that was announced. If you are interested, there is this fantastic book of news. So if you go into Ignite book of news, and we'll add the link to the chat, you can actually go and read every single announcement that came out from this. And it's a giant document. But all the teams that have released something, whether it's GA, preview, or anything else, will be included in this. And for every event that we do at Microsoft, we actually have a book of news. So for Build that is coming up, you're going to get a massive document again with all the announcements, which is great because you can scan quickly what you like and what you don't like and figure out what's new out there. So book of news, keep that in mind. We'll add the link here. Let me just add it now while we speak. I used to write these things, and oh god, we had to do like 3 months in advance, and they had to go through 20,000 reviews. Marketing fun. Anyway, one of the announcements was that now Cosmos DB supports RBAC and Azure AD, which is probably one of the most exciting things that came out from this one, because that means you can now start using managed identities to call into Cosmos DB. You don't have to have secrets anymore. You don't have to have the Cosmos DB connection strings. It's fantastic. You can also have RBAC, so very fine-tuned permissions to your Cosmos data. So it's not just how you access it, but what you can access on the Cosmos DB. And in fact, we're planning on doing a stream on this one, just to show you how to get the Azure SDKs, which has just been released, with the Cosmos DB RBAC all working end-to-end. So a .NET app or a JavaScript app that can call data and pull data from Cosmos DB without passing secrets, which is fantastic. Now, the only thing I don't know there, which has always been a barrier to this implementation, it was the SLA. Right, up until this point, Cosmos DB had a very strict SLA of 9 milliseconds or up to 9 milliseconds for every request. And one of the things that was stopping the Cosmos DB team from implementing Azure AD authentication was that SLA. I don't know how they worked around it, but it is fantastic news no matter what. So, and talking about Cosmos DB as well, now they added public preview for continuous backup and point-in-time restores, which is great. If you ever worked as a DBA or had to manage data, you know how hard it was to manage your backups and making sure that you can get restores at the time that you need them. So not just backing up and restoring, making sure that this all works, but also point-in-time restores. And the fact that you can now automate all that and do it via the portal or the CLI, it's brilliant. So get working on that one, set up your backups, please test your restores, very important. Any backup that you do is useless without proper restore checks. And trust me, you don't want to know how I know, because I've been bitten by that. And back then was tapes, by the way. I had to restore terabytes of data from a tape, a magnetic tape, so it took hours. A whole lost weekend just to realize that my backups did not work. Ta-ta-ta. Anyway, moving on. Another set of exciting news. You can now set up Apple ID with Azure Active Directory. I mean, you could set it up before, but it was such a pain. Now, we've streamlined the process, so there's a document here that explains what you need to do. I mean, it's still a lengthy process because Apple does not play the game well. Like they might do 90% of what they're supposed to do with OpenID Connect, but that 10% will just add a spin there, and you have to go and figure out why it's not as straightforward. So now we have a good document. It's available to you. If you want your users to sign in with Apple ID as well, then now it's a better process.
I mean, Apple
Well, and
ID,
if
as
you're-
it sits,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Sorry.
I was going to say, I remember when it first was announced for Apple ID, so you can use it for authentication. I went through the, I've had an Apple developer account forever. I was trying to set it up, and I'm like, I can't figure this out. And I'm like, you don't have this tenant set up. I'm like, I clicked on it. I just literally came from that screen. What the heck? It was just, so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to step away, and I'm going to use something else, and I'll come back.
Yeah.
I just wanted to learn it, not necessarily just a production thing. It was just like, oh, this looks neat.
Yeah, the whole client secret thing was a real pain, and then like the thing too is if you're building iOS apps and you offer any kind of federated ID, you have to also offer Apple.
ID.
So it was a real pain because we had customers who were like, "I'm using B2C. Do I still have to do this?" Of course, Apple was like, "Yes," and that's going to be an extra 30% because you asked us for your insolence. So it was. I'm glad that's there now. That's going to unblock a whole lot of people.
You and me both. I hope our viewers will also find value in that streamlined or more streamlined experience.
Yep.
Next one, moving away from Microsoft news and onto the wider identity news. On the 3rd of this month, we found out that Okta, we heard that Okta is actually joining forces with Auth0, and they now have a new alliance or partnership that will drive new experiences. So where you had 2 players before, or we had 2 extra players before, now we have one big one, and I think that's I like the fact that it adds innovation. It's going to be interesting to see how people respond and how we respond, and it's exciting times ahead. So if you haven't heard the news, there's a blog post that explains why and how they did that and what's going to happen over the next few months as the acquisition solidifies, which I think it's set to close in July, right?
If you're an Okta or an Auth0 customer today, or if you're using them, and you have opinions on this, I would love to hear them. So join the Discord and tell me,
Yes.
or send us an email at 45show@microsoft.com, because I'm just really curious what current customers are thinking about this whole thing. So yeah, if you've got some opinions or some ideas or any sort of thoughts on that, please join our Discord and let me know.
Maradox Bat says, what do you have to say about this coalition from a compliance point of view? Interesting. Compliance?
Well, I mean, they
Data
have
sharing?
Yeah.
they have their. I mean, each one of those stacks has their own sort of compliance management stuff for managing compliance. You mean from what customers can do with their to maintain their compliance, or more from like are there going to be lawsuits or anything getting in the middle of that, asking about what's going to happen and that sort of thing? Because I mean, I suspect I can't see any reason why somebody would have a leg to stop this from happening. And I think both of their compliance offerings sort of support each other in terms of what customers can do with it. So I think customers would be fine. I don't know what it'll look like though when it comes to data sharing between the two companies and that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't know. But
Yeah, and it's interesting because like I'm assuming when you for all these situations you always have a contract specific with Okta or Auth0.
Yeah.
In the terms that you have agreed to are only for the length of that contract, right? So once that contract expires, then you might be forced to resign a contract, right? And then that could the verbiage or the terminology could be that like, hey, now we can exchange blah blah blah, whatever else in there. It's like, I'm sure they're still figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Stuff like that doesn't happen. Like, well, we got to figure out compliance or XYZ before we can purchase something else. It's like, no, it's the next amount of months we'll figure out all the details.
nice.
I'm assuming so. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. In terms of building compliance solutions, I think a lot of it depends on compliant with what. What regulations, what countries? Is it financial? Is it GDPR? Is it some very specific government thing? Is it a specific industry thing? And it just depends on who supports what. And I don't know. so far what they're talking about is they're going to run independently. So I would imagine certainly somebody's thinking about that. So, and it looks like Bolt. So Bolt's one of our regular viewers. Awesome person. Super helpful too in the Discord if you have questions. But seems that the place that he works has just been acquired too. So they've grown and they're now one of the larger MSPs in the UK, which is awesome. So congrats, Bolt.
Awesome.
It's cool to hear.
If I ever come back in the UK, I'll hit you up, Bolt.
So I have one piece of news.
I'm not done yet. Is
sorry.
Is it related
Okay,
to this
go
one,
ahead.
or do you want me to finish with mine and you can tell yours?
No.
Go ahead.
Finish.
Go ahead,
No. Finish up. Finish your news. Don't let me get in your way.
You do you.
This is my segment. Come on, man. I'm just kidding. Stealing my thunder. All right. Okay.
I'm not trying to. I'm sorry.
The last piece of information is it just came so timely because we did a stream last week about Bicep, which is a DSL for ARM. In effect, you write a little bit of code that transpiles into ARM, or you can take ARM and backwards transpile it into Bicep. And when I was doing the stream, in fact, last week, it said experimental, right? This is Bicep, it's experimental. But I was watching Mark Rasinovic's talk from Ignite. If you haven't done it, it's a fantastic session. Go and watch it. 1 hour and a half of packed content and demos. This guy is king. So Mark was talking about Bicep as well, and he did a great demo. But he was like, hey, we released it today. So what I found out is that on Wednesday, we released Bicep as an official tool. So now Azure CLI, the latest Azure CLI and PowerShell support Bicep, so you don't have to transpile the code into JSON first. You can call AZ group deployment with your Bicep file, and then it will automatically deploy that to your solution. So it's a fantastic tool. I think it adds a lot of value to JSON if you don't like working with raw JSON, and like I don't think anyone enjoys that. In all my years, I've only seen one guy that was able to compile and write JSON ARM templates on the fly. And I'm thinking like SQL servers. Like he wrote hundreds of services in there by hand and by memory. I was in awe. But Bicep now provides you a programmatic way of doing that without you having to remember everything. VS Code has also an extension that now supports IntelliSense, and you get code completion and colorization and everything you want. So it's a fantastic tool. Give it a go. We have a blog post about how to secure your Bicep deployments with Key Vault, so you don't have to screw up your secrets. And it's nice to see that there's another player there to help you build ARM. And that's with the news. So let's pass it back to JP because he's got exciting news as well.
No, it's not really that exciting unless you run an on-prem exchange. But no, I just read about it late last night, and so we didn't have time to get it in like to our news this morning. But if you are still running Exchange on-prem, and that includes people who are using Exchange Hybrid, so even though you may be in Exchange Online, you still may have Exchange servers running because you may still have Exchange servers running because you need them for Exchange Hybrid. If that's you, there's a pretty nasty targeted set of 0 days that just got patched, and you need to patch ASAP. So here's the article about that.
Oh, you got the article. Nice.
There's like a blog post about it. The Exchange team wrote about it. There are the MSRC wrote about it, and there are a bunch of patches that are now available, and they should be on Windows Update by today. But you can also download the patches manually. But definitely something you want to do immediately. It's like 2 or 3 bugs altogether, and you end up in a place where you could potentially have remote code execution and privilege escalation, and somebody could live in your Exchange environment forever, which obviously you don't want that. So patch today if you haven't, because you need to. That's it. That's all I have.
Somebody mentioned Farmer, by the way, and just not to hide the fact, there's already on the same GitHub page for Bicep. There is a nice at the bottom of the community projects and alternatives, and they do mention Farmer and CloudMaker. So if you prefer FSharp, then Farmer is also another great tool. I heard some good comments there. I haven't tested it myself yet, but there you have it. Lots of options.
Cool. So today we have Javier Lozano, Microsoft
basically waiting
MVP,
there.
MVP to the stars.
Honorary FTE, right? I mean, he's done so much work with Microsoft these days that you could be an honorary FTE for.
That's right. I get a little badge.
Yeah.
I had to ask. I was like, "Do you work?" Like it's almost like a thing that changes. It's like, okay, does Javier work here today? Like we almost need to go start one of those websites of is Javier an FTE today or not? So Javier,
And it just shows yes or no. I mean, that's
it. And we'll have to keep it. I mean, it'll be live, right? Because it could change at any point.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And we need to throw in a shrugging. Because like we don't know. It's like it tips either way.
Maybe we'll just make a Twitter bot that asks you that every day.
Yeah.
That's right. Very nice.
So Javier,
Javier working on Microsoft today. There you go.
Yeah. So you've got a firm in Iowa that does software, right?
Yeah, I do. I have a little. I'm bringing it up on the stream over here.
JP, you need to share different screens, my friend.
I know.
That's all right.
Okay.
I'll just bring it up.
He's on the roll. It's fine.
It's all good. Yeah,
So you have a consultancy, right?
I have a small consultancy of myself and a couple partners in trusts, and it's cleverly called LozanoTek. The funny thing about the name LozanoTek, I thought about this name back in 7th grade.
That's amazing. Inspirations while you were young.
Because I wanted to build a software company. So I love software, and I've been doing stuff with Microsoft since beginning of time. Well, at least my career, and you can tell it's 90s based because it's got TEK at the end. So that's not it's not the old ways. But anyway, so yeah, I do consulting for clients either here in the Des Moines, Iowa area or remotely, right? I can always easily get on a plane. Well, we used to easily get on a plane, and travel places. Now that it's remote, it's a little bit it's a little bit simpler at times. But yeah, so I do ASP.NET, Azure, and I would say web platform, IIS and those sort of things. But now since we're moving to Azure, it's a little more of that. And you can see my dog walking in. He's just jerk like that. He just walks in.
Nice.
And, like he owns the place.
Love dogs. Love dogs.
No, he's a great dog. Don't get me wrong. But it's just like, okay, whatever. I don't care what you're doing. And I do it because otherwise you'll hear a
scratch
on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just, I'd rather just go with it. But anyway, So
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Does LozanoTek with CH belong to you as well? Do you redirect people to your LozanoTek with a K?
No, I do not. That's a good one. I have never done that. So don't. Maybe that's the website.
Right, I'm just registering the account now. Just give me a second.
That's right. Name, chief. Give me a second. Bot. Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, something to think about.
Yeah. No.
All the roads lead to LozanoTek, my friend.
That's right. Yeah. So
Yes.
it's been fun. I've been doing it since 2009 part time, and then I went full time with it with consulting in 2014. So it's been a fun ride.
Nice. That's awesome.
I've seen a lot of things. I've done a lot of things, and every client's different. So.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's awesome. So what are you gonna do with this today? I understand we're doing a little WPF.
Yeah. So last week, and I'm switching here tabs. Last week, for another side thing that I do called .NET Conf, we had a specific event focusing on Windows, right? So we've talked about microservices, we talked about Blazor, we talked about Xamarin, all the other stuff in there. But this time we decided to talk about Windows because it was about time. We haven't talked about Windows. So one of the presentations that I did, because for the past year, actually for the past 2 or 3 years, I've been focusing a lot on identity, and I'll use air quotes for identity, right? Because it means different things to different people, right? So one of the things that I wanted to do was like, hey, before I sprinkled some little bit of Microsoft Identity and Azure AD into web applications, I wonder what does that look like on a web application. In other words, using Microsoft account or Azure AD or both, right, to authenticate a user and set up that information, that context in a Windows app, a WPF app, right? So the presentation I did last week was around that. So when I was talking with Christos about it, it's like, hey, let's do it now. Let's add an API. Let's bundle it all together and see how the magic happens. So it's like, great, let's figure that out, because I use it as a learning tool, because again, I haven't done it before. But I think, a lot of people out there are wondering, it's like, well, I have a desktop app, how does that tie to the cloud? So yeah, so I figured that'll be a good conversation for us to have as a group.
So the focus on Windows last week, I'm curious, because we talked about this a little bit earlier too. So if you're
no, he's going now.
No.
Do this.
No, I want to write a Teams app. Like,
wait,
hey
Layla, we got Layla just rating us.
Hey, what did you guys do? What were you working on today, Layla? Was it something cool? Thanks for coming and hanging out. We're just getting started too, so it's perfect. Perfect timing.
I love
Uncanny.
Layla. She's a fellow .NET Foundation board member, so yeah.
See,
before too long, literally the entire .NET Foundation board is going to be on the show, because we had Claire. Claire was here on Monday.
Oh, she was. Oh, yeah.
She was, yeah. So,
very nice.
And definitely been a few other ones. So, okay. So here's my question. So, I had asked a question of like, hey, if I'm going to build a .NET desktop app, what should I use? And I got like a million tweet replies, but I still wasn't really sure. At the end, I was like, okay, so I have a very wide decision tree, But so the thing I was wondering though is like, last week was the big .NET Conf on Windows, and like what came out of that? Like what is the way to build a .NET desktop app today? Like where does WPF sit, I guess, compared to like the billion other things you can do?
Right, and so I'm gonna pull a PM role here. It's like, it depends, right?
Wait a minute, do we need to go change the website? Is Javier working at Microsoft today?
Yes, exactly. Yes, pretty much. And honestly, it's funny because actually Scott Hunter mentioned this part of the keynote and part of the welcome session at the beginning. Someone asked him, it's like, hey, what would you build this, if you were to do something or not? Because we have the .NET MAUI, which is multi-platform act something UI. I forgot what the A is.
Multi-platform application unified interface or something.
There
like
you
that.
go.
Yeah.
So, and the reason why I don't know that, it's just know the MAUI, right? It's going to change to something else before it ships, but because it typically does. But anyway, so they're talking about that, talking about WPF, and one of the things that Scott Hunter did say that I silently agree with, because I couldn't speak because I was on the stream, and there's my cat, is that Windows Forms is good enough for some of those things. So it really depends. When I say
Windows
that,
Forms.
it really depends on what you're trying to do. If you want something fancy, crazy binding, those sort of things, then yeah, use WPF because it gives you the power to do that. If you just need something to sit in a tray, to pop up a window, to type in some data and hit OK, Windows Forms has been rocking that since 2001, and actually since VB6. You know what I'm saying? They got that down to a science.
And now runs on .NET 5.
Right,
so
exactly. Yep.
Upgrade your Windows Forms apps to .NET 5, and you're done.
Right. Go ahead, sir.
I want to build a Teams app that's fast, right? Because like there's a chat that with some friends or whatever, and somebody goes on a rant, and my machine, like I can hear my fan spinning up, and my machine starts getting slow, and
that's
it'd be awesome to have like in
the background.
It'd be awesome to have like a super fast, ultra light Teams chat client, almost in like do it in like C++ or something to make it just blazingly fast, so that I can chat with people without my machine dying. So
I'll tell you what, JP. The future is Blazor. Blazor desktop, Blazor mobile, Blazor web. Done.
What do you think, Javier? Is the future Blazor desktop?
I think Blazor is great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Blazor. It's for front end UI and everything is great. I think there's gonna be always someone trying to squeeze the perf out of it. So if you want something that's malleable, that I write once and I'm able to reuse it and do some of these bindings and all the extra knowledge that I have, then Blazor is great for that, right? Because I'm a web developer, I can do that. Now, there's a lot of, and you gents know this, is that there's a lot of people who are web developers but don't understand the desktop, and there's the desktop developers who are just desktop developers and don't understand the web. So there's always going to be that chasm between the two of them, right? And the reason why I said it is because I literally cut my teeth in VV 1.0. doing a bunch of that stuff. And then I became a web developer. So I know desktops and I know web, so I can kind of sort of bring those two aspects together. So again, it really depends on what approach you would take. I like the attractiveness of Blazor for bindings and doing those sort of things mobile because of, again, it's a skill set that I know, and I know it's going to scale, it's going to work the way expected, and it's the tooling that I'm familiar with, right? I always used a golfing analogy back when I had free time before kids, and I used to go golfing. Whereas, like, I know that I can grab my 9-iron and I can hit it 145 yards and stick it in the pin every single time. So I'm just going to go with that because my goal is to get that birdie or try to get my score where I need it to be. So I'm going to use the right tool for the job. Now I'm going to spend some time learning the other tools, not saying because they're not good, so I can become familiar with it, because then my driver could get better, for continuing the crappy analogy here. So I will spend time to do those things, but at the same time, it's not necessarily, if I need something done, I'm going to go with what I know that I can quickly get done.
Do you feel that as a consultant, you need to know these technologies more than like line of business developers?
I would say you do. I mean, a good example of this, one of my current clients right now that I'm working with, we're working on essentially creating an IAM, so Identity Access Management, right? We're writing some custom stuff. We're not sure we're going to do what we're going to use for the clients yet. We're using for the FTEs, we're using Azure AD. So it's like, so we're, all the integrations, things like that. But their major line of business app, it's a VB6 app.
Wow.
Running VB6. I mean, it's just, and then some other websites are ASP 3.0.
Are you hanging out with Julie Lerman? I remember she had like this VB6 app from back in the day.
Yeah, but the thing it's a profitable app. It's their literally major line of application app, and it works. It hums, right? So I have to, when I haven't touched the VB6 app, I've cut my teeth in VB6. I understand it well. I've done a lot of too much comm interrupt to actually care about it, right? That it's just like, okay, great. Now, how do we take these components and split them into microservices or C# console apps or whatever those things are? So so I think as a consultant, you sort of have to know, here's what works and here's what doesn't work. Yeah. And also, I'm probably a bad consultant when I say I don't know.
Sure.
Because I don't know because of I've never been asked that question before. Sure. And I always say, let's figure it out. Here are the pros and cons, and then go forward with it, rather than saying, oh yeah, it's going to be a piece of cake, and then 3 months later, we're still trying to figure out if it's a cake or a pie. I'd rather not take that approach. That's why. Anyway, so and that will actually vary depending on client too. So.
Sure. And I have to say that I fondly look back to Windows Forms and Web Forms. They are so productive as tools. And if I want to quickly put something together for a desktop, I will still do it in WinForms.
So I'm going to take a quick aside here. So when you're talking about that, so I have a talk that I've been doing forever. It's called Real-Time SignalR, and I'm showing it here on the browser. So one of the things you were talking about, JP, about it's like, hey, how do we do this? And I want a Teams app, whatever. One of the demos, which is the classic chat application demo that you see, which is SignalR. You should not use SignalR for chat apps. It's an easy way to connect the dots, but it's not a chat platform.
Right.
So I'm sure my friend Brady Gaster will love me for saying that, because we joke about that all the time. But anyway, the chat application, if you click on it here, we have chat windows. So if you go to source/chat application chat windows, this is a Windows form.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Bring it on.
There
you go, JP. That's your answer.
That actually uses SignalR behind the scenes. If you click on it, there's
so
form,
what you're telling me.
So
you're saying I ought to build a Windows Forms app that proxies team chats through SignalR.
Yes.
That's what I heard.
Yes, obviously. Yes, you've heard it very, very nice.
Now that would be $300 for the hour, because
that is right. No, for the 15 minutes. Just it's like a house call. Like it's like someone fixing your fridge or something.
We lure you in for some advice. Isn't it amazing? Come and talk.
When to think about it too, what I did too is I took all the the chat stuff, and I created event handlers, events, proxies, so it's all segregated, right? But anyway, it just kind of goes on to show you that, yeah, you can build this, and it's fun when I do the demo. You can actually see the default HTML page that shows the page, and then you have the Windows app, and it's literally real-time syncing between the two. And it
That's
just
awesome.
works. Because it's
awesome.
Windows Forms. I mean, it just works.
Exactly, it just works. But it's not cross platform. So
it is not cross-platform. Actually, the cool thing that you should do, if you're looking for kind of flare it up a bit, have it be a terminal app. So you go back into like the old worlds of BBS. You know what I mean? So literally,
cool.
or you're chatting, all you see is just the chat on. That is as fast as you're gonna get because you don't have to deal with a UI thread.
Exactly.
No, that's true.
It works. It just
I thought
works.
like, what if we put like an IRC head on Teams? Then you just use whatever IRC client you've got. Is there music playing? I keep on feeling like I'm hearing music.
It's my daughter in the background. You don't have to pay royalties for it.
I just don't want us to get copyright struck again,
Yeah. Again, if you see a random animal, that's me. If you hear random music, that's Christos.
Hey, it's a zoo over here, man. It's education. Yeah, it's that life, absolutely.
Very nice.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah, So you're not hearing things. You're not going crazy. It's my daughter playing the piano.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Awesome.
Maybe I should have said no, right? And then just JP going crazy, like, oh my god, I'm leaving.
I would have just slowly declined the whole show. By the end of the show,
nice.
like the hair's all out, my eyes are all bloodshot. Like, what is that noise?
Constantly looking up stuff, tearing things apart to start figuring out what's going on.
Like skittish and paranoid, that'd be great.
Nice.
Okay,
Right.
so let's look at some WPF and
I was
some
going to
APIs.
say, let me start quick here. I'm going to share something so that people have it. So that's my Twitter. That's my email. That's the website. My consultant. I mean, I haven't updated since 2012 because I've been busy. It goes back into the cobbler's kids have to wear shoes sort of thing. My website doesn't have the most love in town because I'm taking care of everybody else's website.
And if you're watching this one after the show, the links will be right below on our YouTube description.
Yep. And then line number 6 is the bit.ly to where the demos are at.
Very nice.
Okay, cool.
Which is what I was showing that, so in case you wanted to look at it. And the one thing before I kind of show it is like there's essentially 2 branches. There's the main branch, which we'll kind of go through and build out. And then there's a complete branch, which is like all the code's there. Now, the only thing you have to do at that point is you have to go and actually go to Azure AD, create the app registrations and do those things. But we'll step through that as we go along. So people will be more.
Could you show the bit.ly once more?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or we can just
the bit.ly's right there.
We'll just type it. I'll just put it in the chat. That way people will have it.
Yep,
LZNO. Oh, a custom bit.ly. Now that's cool.
I know.
Look at that.
Ooh, spared no expense.
Like a proper consultant, my friend. Tracking everything.
That's awesome.
So actually, the reason why I have it because I keep forgetting the bit.ly URL, so I just went with my own because I'm not that smart. So yeah, give me 2 seconds here. Let me reset. There we go. Sweet, awesome. So yeah, let's go look at some Windows. So it's funny because I'm running on a Mac here, but Windows is a virtual machine. It has been a virtual machine for like the past I don't know how many years, and it works, right? So it's pretty straightforward. So, all right. So let's go look at the client app first. Actually, what do you want to look at? Client app, and not WPF or Web API. I think the Web API is the easiest to cover.
Okay.
Than a client app. In other words,
there.
Yeah. So let's do that. Let me open up this one and go File. Come on. And of course, Visual Studio. Actually, there we go. Recent File Solutions, and both of them, as people look at the demos, the client and the Web API solutions are in the same repo, so don't have to worry about you have to clone different things and everything.
Fantastic, all in one.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about doing fancy stuff. And
you're talking about monorepos now. What will people?
Don't get me started on monorepos. There's a special place where for monorepos.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going into that.
So
monorepos rock.
Perfect. So let me see. And
can you please zoom your code at 175, please?
Yep. 1 second. Let me close all of this stuff. For whatever reason, Visual Studio decides to. Oh, come on.
The white bar of death.
Oh. So if Mr. Tim Holger is watching right now, just letting you know, performance issues.
Come on. Come on, just close. I want to close them all. I'm right-clicking on you, and I'm saying close all the tabs. All right, so we'll start with the identity controller first. All right, and I'll zoom in down at 175. So, oh, I forgot it wasn't a preset there. So, 175. Actually, I realized that that I actually changed my font. So let me do that quick here. It's funny because
custom fonts.
Yeah, I do have custom fonts. I use Fira code for all the cons because it's got ligatures.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And and it makes it so much easier. Actually, I'm just going to tap over here. So
Does
funny
it though? I don't know. Ligatures are hit and miss.
So funny. I love ligatures. I mean, I take Fira code and I put it everywhere where I'm doing code just because it's so much easier.
VS Code as well?
Yeah, VS Code. Yep. But you got to use quotes because it's got a space in it, because VS Code. So you got to do that and then pick it. But it's funny because I was doing tech checks about 2 weeks ago for the .NET Conf event, and I was telling people we kind of bump up these things and so forth. So when I did my demo, I had the font up to like 18. Well, when I was working on the demo for this stream, I was like, I can't see because I'm typing all this stuff. So let me bump down the font, and I completely forgot to bump it back up. So we're waiting, and now on Visual Studio. Really? Good Lord. Anyway, so as we wait for this thing to load, we can probably see that I have an identity controller in here. So this is a basic controller like you would have out there. And what I like to do when I kind of show, at least on the API side of things or on the web side of things, is that this is what I call an echo controller. Right. So what does that mean? It means that this controller is just a plain Jane web API controller, but line 12 in it is where it says, hey, I need to get the base.user. So that base.user is a claims principal, right? That is the thing that gets attached to the thread and says, here's the current execution context for that and for the current user. Now that could be set. Yay.
And for the people that don't know about claims principles, right? It's the identity object within .NET.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There is. There is a. Now let me go 100. Does that look good? Is that better?
That looks great.
Bump it up to 1. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So claims principle was introduced, I don't know, several years ago. There were different ones, and there are different kinds of principles. And it's principle with a PAL, not with a PLE. And the thing about it is, like, there's actually an interface. It's iPrinciple. So every time you write code or if you've written code, maybe, and you do user that, come on, is enroll. That essentially is it's a method on the interface, on the iPrinciple interface, right? So this will say, hey, what role are you looking for, right? Or like, for example, one of the things that I've done when I do some of these things, I actually write an extension method and I say user.hasPermission.
Mm-hmm.
Because a role is different than a permission.
Yep.
Right. So you can do that, and you can create extension methods based on that and all that fun stuff. So anyway, so this is the echo controller. So it essentially says, give me all the claims, give me all the things that are true about the current user, right? That have been stated via whether it be a cookie that I authenticated using forms authentication, or a third-party IDP like Microsoft ID or B2C or Okta or Auth0, whatever. All those details are going to come via a claim, via that token or via that information, and then this literally just loops through it and says, give me the type of the claim that it is, and give me the value. So that way we can kind of show it here. So anyway, so it does that. So that's a pretty simple claims controller. Echo controller. And if I go look at the role controller is actually even more lame because it doesn't do anything, right? It just says, hey, here are your roles. And the whole reason for the role controller here is because part of the demo that I'm going to show you is that once we take a WPF application and we add security to it, identity to it, so we can authenticate against Azure AD, whether you're using an organization or using a Microsoft account, we were going to go and request a token, right, for that API. Once I have that API, when I have that token for the API, we're going to use the WPF application is going to call that API and do a basic echo. And then we can actually say, hey, let's call this role controller, right, to get the roles back. And then what we can do is we can then at that point create a new identity, a new principal on the Windows machine and say, now every thread that it runs with it runs under this principal using these roles.
Okay.
So it's
how?
Go ahead.
How do you get that principal hydrated? Like, what's wiring up the call to the principal?
These little hands. Now, and so we'll talk about that, kind of how you can do that, enable that, and you can actually say, hey, every new thread that the app domain creates. Remember app domains from back in the day. So so every thread that the app domain creates, assign this principal to it.
Okay.
So typically what you would do this, and this kind of shows my age. One of the things that I used to do before is that before a Windows form would show up, the actual application that to say, hey, here's the GUI or whatever else, right? SAML has app.saml. In WinForms you have just main, right? That essentially launches part of the executable before you launch this thing. It's like, what I've done in the past is I would say, hey, let's create a simple form that actually authenticates the user and gathers all that information before the app is actually launched. So the moment I launch the app, the moment that app launches, it says, here's your login screen, you type in your credentials, gathers all that data, and then it creates a principal and it sets it. So any form that you spin up that way afterwards will have that same thread. Will have that information on the thread. So it's just one of those patterns that I developed. Not necessarily that's the way. It's just like, hey, it works for me. So again, like that 9-iron, I'm gonna keep on swinging it.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of how that is here, and the big bulk of it, obviously, because it's an ASP.NET and a Core app, it's inside the startup. Okay.
Right.
So in here this is file new startup controllers at development. Now the big thing here, obviously, we all know that lines 38 and 37 and 38. I can scroll down a bit, with use authentication and use authorization, right? So that essentially is bootstrapping the middleware to say, yeah, there's authentication middleware that we have to execute, right? Mm-hmm. And then the authorization says, great, now we can, as part of the attribute that you can add to a controller, like an authorized attribute, you can say that will essentially trigger and says, okay, now do you have the right permission, the right access to this thing? As I joked on my .NET Conf presentation last week, is that this is the classic line from Kindergarten Cop, is who is your daddy and what does he do?
Oh my god, that's fantastic! I'm going to steal that. I'm just going to go and
You're welcome. Yeah, I mean,
that's amazing.
It's the only way to explain authentication.
But you have to make it with the accent. I mean,
I have
the fact that you
accent.
did not use the accent.
I do not.
Christos, you're the power lifter. If anybody can do an Arnold impersonation, it's got to be you.
I can only imitate him in muscles, not in the accent.
That's right.
And I have a long way to go until I get into anywhere near the physique of the master. But
oh my god, that's
very nice.
That's the best thing I've heard all day. We're done now. I've gotten everything I could possibly.
That's right. Thank you everybody for watching. Have a wonderful day.
It's a wrap.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the thing I'm going to do here is now, we have just the shell of an app and it works. And Papaya debug. There's no authentication. Oh, actually, I've realized that I skipped one thing. I was waiting since I'm having perf issues. Line 44 mm-hmm. is a way that you can actually say, hey, for everything requires authorization, period. Before you usually see an attribute being attached mm-hmm. to a controller or whatever, and it's like, at this point, it's like, do not care. Every single resource that is a controller requires authorization. It's just
I feel like that changes.
So much simpler.
I feel like with every point release that changes. Because in other scaffolded code even, and you'll see it in the configure services, you'll have you'll create an authorization policy and it'll be require authenticated user, and then that'll be the policy that's applied to the whole thing. And now there's and this is .NET 5, right? You said?
This is .NET 5. Yep.
Okay.
Now,
because that's awesome. It's so short and sweet and to the point.
Right. So, to me, the authorization policy, it is the right way if you want to customize every single knob in it.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it gives you access to everything. This leverages that behind the scenes, right? But it's just like, hey, I just need it for this.
Yeah.
Done. Right.
That's awesome.
So if you want to be able to create a policy, it's like, hey, I want this policy, because the policy you can actually then inspect the claims and the token that comes through. It's like, I want to make sure that this actual claim in the token is existing. This
Yep.
you don't have access for that. You could by creating your own attribute, but now you're the guts of it, right? Rather than kind of doing it at, I would say, the middleware level rather than at the ASP.NET execution pipeline level.
Okay.
If that
Okay.
makes
Interesting. Yep. Yep.
Because
Okay, cool.
because if I were to come over here and just add authorize come on,
No suggestions.
no.
That's it.
Anyway, so if it were to eventually do it, or the attribute, then at that point is I'm at the actual ASP.NET core pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm actually extending what the stuff is in there. I can create my own authorization attribute or whatever, right? Put it there, but that's an extension of that rather than this is more middleware when I'm adding it.
All right. Cool.
So before the controller actually even is, it's still a twinkle in the pipeline's eye, right? Before the controller actually gets created, that's when it actually gets instantiated and processed. So it's just depending where you want it done.
Yeah.
So cool. So the reason why I have that here is I brought up the NuGet references because you guys work with a really cool NuGet package called Microsoft.Identity.Web.
You bet.
And this is great because it allows me to just plug into the Azure AD pipeline, right, without actually knowing all the intricate details. Now, for me, I love the intricate details, but that's just me being an identity nerd, I guess. But for all intents and purposes, I don't have to know all those details, right?
Right.
So then I can just hit install in here, and what we'll do here, go ahead and wait for this. What I'm going to do is, because I don't trust it, I'm going to kill that other Visual Studio instance because Visual Studio, and I'm going to hit load on that one. So at least we're only suffering with the pain of this one and not the other one.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm just literally adding a reference to the package. Come on, get here. And as we wait for that, one of the things that I was going to show here, come on, maybe.
So did you just download 1.7.0?
1.7.0, yeah.
Damn. What? It hasn't even been released on the site yet. How many downloads does he have? Doesn't say.
I'll tell you in a second. That's a good question.
I think you just pulled the latest one.
February 27th.
27th. So yeah, it's
Been
been
out for a
around.
couple weeks.
Yeah. So and it did it actually install yet? It's thinking about installing. Really? Come on! I told you to install. This is why we can't have nice things.
I think that the OBS Ninja has been killing our hosts or guests machine for a while.
Perfect. Sweet. So over here, then I bring up the development JSON, app settings.json, and here's where you can actually provide the metadata or the configuration information for your Azure AD instance, right?
Yep.
So here's the GUID, here's the name of the domain. And the one thing that I was like, ooh, I like this, is that you can actually specify the tenant directory, the directory ID, and we'll cover that here in a second. So when you say the directory ID, it limits it to that tenant, which is cool. Or you can say common, which actually allows you to both do Azure AD and Microsoft account. Organizations only does Azure AD, and consumers only does Microsoft account. So I was like,
Yeah, those
cool.
are relatively new helpers, and they are sort of shortcuts, and you can use just a directory name too. So you could use you could even use your custom domain. So if your custom domain on your directory is LozanoTek.com, then you could even put that in there for tenant ID, and it'll resolve because it can resolve to a GUID, to the on Microsoft.com name, or to a custom domain. So it's pretty flexible.
Yeah.
But those are all single tenant.
Yeah, and the reason why I like this was because before it was just like, okay, when I would register the app, it was like, I really don't care about Azure AD because I don't want to add users to that. I just want Microsoft accounts, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want someone with a random Microsoft, like an Azure AD account logging into the application. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So this way allows me to say, hey, this is just strictly MSA, Microsoft account, thing. So I like this. This was nice.
So
yeah,
one quick question. So we do have a bit of a sidebar.
Yeah.
Why should SignalR not be used for chat apps?
Because it does more than just chat apps, right? Can you use it? Yes. Is it meant for synchronizations across the web? Absolutely, right? The joke that Brady and I have is that the canonical demo for SignalR is always a chat app.
Or a ticker. No. Wait a minute.
Or some
Here's
sort
a
of
ticker.
ticker, right?
Come on. Don't leave the poor ticker alone.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't mean that it shouldn't. Like, again, from my perspective, you can use it, and I have used it mostly for notifications rather than chat apps, right? Because you can typically buy a chat suite and outsource it that way, right? If you want it, especially for like web apps. But can you build it? Yes. But now you're gonna have to understand all the intricacies of the stuff that's there. But that's regardless what you're gonna build, right?
And Sahil is asking, can SignalR be used to sync data between different devices? I don't think it's a sync framework, right? It's more of a real-time communication framework.
Right. And that's a slippery slope. You know what I'm saying? So this goes back to the chat app. It's like, whoa, I was able to bend light and time to make the SignalR to make this with the chat app. What else can it do?
Yeah.
Right? And typically, so what he was asking about, can I sync data between the two? Typically, what I've done is that I've actually sent short messages between the two. So I was like, hey, app refresh or data refresh. So I will call the client and saying, there's a new data. Go fetch it. And the app will then make an API call and fetch it that way.
Right.
Using a web, because that way you're separating the concerns. Because otherwise you're just bloating your SignalR messages. To get whatever, to again bend light and time to do something that it could do, but it shouldn't do, right? What's that line from Jurassic Park? It's like your engineers were too busy trying to figure out whether they could do it. They never stopped to think whether they should do it. They should.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Someone's asking SignalR or gRPC. So if I remember correctly, or if I understand correctly, gRPC is a very low-level communication framework for creating APIs or whatever, where SignalR is more of a communication framework where you can send messages either to singlecast or multicast.
Right. Essentially, you can do eventing on top of it, right? It has a richer API on top of it. gRPC does have a good API behind it, but that is more of like, hey, I need to just shove a bunch of data, or I need to do this as fast as possible, and it's completely it's platform and it's cross-platform because so you can actually have different clients that connect to it. Right, and it also uses a different version of HTTP. I mean, there's other things that you can do with it. And again, not saying that's bad. It's just that they're not. Just because they do the same thing doesn't mean they're equal. Right.
Yeah.
So, but man, you say SignalR one time, and everybody's just like on it.
Well, to be honest, we're getting the man himself, Mr. Brady, coming on the show to talk about SignalR and identity and how they are tied together. So, if you're so keen in learning more about SignalR, then watch this space because Brady Gaster is coming. He's the PM for SignalR, among other things.
Brady Gaster is a wonderful human being. I'm just going to say that on the stream, live. He's a great guy. Trust me. Like Brady and I go back a long way, and actually, he was one of the persons that back again, like a broken record with .NET Conf, we actually created SignalR, the ability to change, I'll use the word channels or streams URLs, so that way if someone's watching it, because several years ago we were running the Learn TV, right, URL, which is essentially Channel 9 and doing everything it has there, and then we were switching to Twitch to do some of the other live streaming. So how in the heck do you update so many thousands of people watching this thing real time to say, hey, no longer watch channel 4, now switch turn to channel 3. So we use SignalR with that to be able to say, hey, let's publish out this message to everybody that's watching, and literally we flipped it on them instantly. So back to that messaging thing, it's great for those sort of things. And we actually use Microsoft Identity for the admin piece of it. So we didn't want just someone randomly switching stuff. Because literally we were injecting HTML into your HTML the way we were doing it. So it's like, let's try to be a little more secure with it. But anyway,
cool.
So I've added the using statement, and I can do services dot and Azure. No, actually not Azure.
It's Microsoft. Who named this? Microsoft and Microsoft Identity Web API Authentication. Well, there's something to be said about naming it Microsoft.
Someone with a very wide monitor decided that was a good name.
It just rolls off the tongue, right?
Yeah, it really does. And it's one character different from the other one, which is Add Web App Authentication. So that never ever causes problems.
Ever.
No, not even in live demos where I've done before, and I couldn't figure out why the hell things were not working.
Right. So, but the thing about it, we're poking fun at it, but the documentation is good. It says, let's see, let me zoom in here. It says, protects the web API with Microsoft Identity Platform, formerly Azure AD 2.0. This method expects the configuration file will have a section named Azure AD as default with the necessary settings to initialize authentication options. So if you're sitting here and it's like, I don't know what the heck it's doing, you're not reading. Right? Because it's like, here's what you need to do.
Yep.
So in here, because we have it in the app development JSON, I'm just literally just going to say, hey, we need that instance. And fortunately, one of the overloads of it takes an iConfiguration instance. So we can just say, hey, here's my configuration.
And if you're using the default name, that's it, right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yep. Now, to me, again, the nerd on some of this stuff, I want to know how this sausage is made, right? How, like, line 24 is, because the reason why I say that is when I've done this before is I'm doing services that add authentication, that JWT bearer, configure these things, here are the claims, here's all the stuff that I want to do, right?
Yep.
And that could turn into, depending on what you're doing, at least 10 lines of code, if not more. Right?
Yep.
Because you're essentially configuring all these different things. So, but I have complete and ultimate power to be able to do these things. This one, for what I'm doing here, I'm okay with giving some of that control over, because like literally, I just want to care about using, getting an API token, and having it validated against Microsoft Identity.
Yep.
That's it. So it's good enough, right? But
well, and the cool part is, I mean,
go ahead.
It essentially configures all of the primitives that are there in ASP.NET. And so things like, you can still add options. Like, you could still do a services configure on, say, JWT bearer options, or I think there's a new one that derives from it, Microsoft Identity options, and still get some more control, or like hook into certain events, that sort of thing.
Right.
So it is a bit of an opaque box, however. Of I added it. I hope it works.
Right, it's just like knock on wood, let's see if it goes.
Yeah.
And there's other extensions, there's other things you can do behind it. You can actually say, hey, do an in-memory token cache, so we can cache the token. It's available in case I need to take that token. In other words, I have my client and I have my API, and my API calls an API, which calls an API, and then just API all the way down, right? You can use that cache to be able to have it available. Otherwise, you're going to have to manually cache it, right? Here, I don't care, because I'm just kind of echoing that token back, right?
Yep.
But yeah, so but it's kind of nice, from that perspective, because it's not necessarily a difficult problem to solve; it's a tedious problem to solve.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. So let's go see it in action here. Actually, before we do any of that, what we have to do is, and I already brought this up, we have to do an app registration. So let me know if you can see it.
Maybe a couple Zoom clicks.
Yep,
yeah, please. It's
how about that?
My old eyes can't see.
Looks great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we'll do a new registration, and here's where we're actually going to register our API. So I'm going to call this is the 425 show API. Okay.
Okay.
It's not the official 425 show API, but it's one of the APIs, right? So one of the things that I want to be able to select here, this goes back to the flavors that we're talking about. This is a single tenant. So this LozanoTek this is actually tied to my MSDN account that we get through Microsoft. So
MVPs, right?
it's just there for playing. I actually do have an actual Azure AD that I never show on streams because it's different, right?
But did you know they can also get a Microsoft 365 tenant for testing?
Yes, I have that too. Yep.
Cool.
Yep, I have both. Now that one gets the least amount of love because I'm always working on the other one, but it's good enough for. I mean, I set up teams and I set up all those things so I can actually start playing with some of actual data rather than not. So anyway, so here are the different flavors, and the flavor that I'm going to choose is this one. We can say, here's a multi-tenant. So this will be the common. I care about an Azure ID tenant, or multiple tenants, and a Microsoft account. So I would say more often than not, this is the most common one. Okay, then I can hit register. Now I don't need a redirect URI because I'm not really doing OIDC. I'm just registering the app.
Yep.
It's pretty straightforward, right? And the reason why I bring that up to the streams, to people watching, is that if you care about using, logging in and in your application having the information for your Microsoft account or whatever the Microsoft identity that you got back, then you need to have a redirect URI because welcome to the protocol. That's just the way it works. So anyway, so we talked about here's the application IDs, here's the directory tenants, here's the object IDs. Now, one of the things that we actually need to do is we need to actually click in here and say expose an API. Okay?
Yes.
So APIs are fun because we can define scopes, which essentially says, here's what kind of functionality I could restrict, or here's data that I can restrict. Right? So when I request a token and I'm passing it to the API, I want to be able to pass in, here's the scope, here's the intent of this token. So the token will have all that information in it. All right? And I kind of like this UI for it. The difference, though, that the one thing I don't like, and you guys can beat me up for it, is just this application URI. Because I get it. It's there to kind of make it unique, right? But at the same time, it's just like we could have picked a different pattern. I guess, I don't know.
No, it's true. I mean, you can change it, luckily.
Right,
But-
exactly, yeah. But it's a demo, right? And there's my golden retriever just walking in like he owns the place. So I'm going to hit save and continue. So in here, we'll save it, and this essentially just creates the URI for all of the scopes that we can add underneath of it. And good Lord, it's like literally a party in here. Go. Here, let me kick him out. Go. You need to go. He's like, no.
So Javier's jacket is actually yellow, but
It is.
but we like the way it looks. We thought, well, let's keep it. So
That's right.
That's why he's pink from the neck down.
Yeah.
So we're going to add a display name. So admin consent display name. We'll call it demo read. Actually, demo.read. And it's really we just need something for it. We're not, and then it's like read perms for the demo. That's good enough. We had add scope. Oh, sorry, the scope name was up here. I realized that I did this wrong. I was in the wrong. My apologies. So demo read. Hooray for reading labels. So yeah.
But
so
now
at
you
this
have
point,
your whole scope, right? So now you've got
Right,
the
I have my
entire
whole scope.
well-qualified. Yep.
Right, I have a fully well-qualified scope for this, so that way any API, any client that I register can say, hey, I want a token for this specific scope.
Yep.
Right? Or scopes, plural, right? So it could do that. So the one thing that I did not do here is that I need to come in and copy the client ID from this, and literally this, again, it's nice because I can just copy paste.
Yep.
Domain is LCT Corp because YOLO. And again, tenant ID is just common, both organizations and consumers. Now, unfortunately, I cannot test this because I need to get a token. So
Makes sense.
do you both gents know how I can get a token from the Azure portal for that out of the box without going through the whole protocol?
You can get one from Azure. You can get one from the Azure CLI. Although that's kind of a mess too. I mean, we could very quickly write you a login, an authorized URL that you can go to. They're pretty straightforward.
No worries. No, and the reason I was wondering, so that way we can prove, was like, ta-da, look, it does authenticate, right? Rather than like, let's put a pause and then it's work. Let me bring up the other thing. You know what I mean? That's the only reason why I bring it up. But anyway, trust me. You know, well, here's a good example of this. Let's just run it. Trust me, I'm a consultant. We'll run this guy. This here, and kind of go. Do we have any questions that people have been asking? I'm kind of been all over the place. So
we've been covering most of them, and then when people ask, we bring them over. There was a lot of chat around SignalR, and then now everyone's expecting to see the demo. I think.
That's right. Cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the whole gist here is for eventually Visual Studio to compile and launch this. And the only thing I wanted to show was that if I go to the /identity, you'll see a 401. But because essentially at that point is forcing authorization. Yeah. So I have the default one. It's not going to error out. Well, it's going to technically error out, but not necessarily an exception error, right? It says, hey, you cannot pass go connect $200 because you do not have the identity there. So yeah, so we'll wait for that. As that is loading, come on. I think it is OBS Ninja that's just
OBS
killing
Ninja
this.
is killing everything, man. I don't know why. Must be doing something. I wonder if it's doing some kind of a
bring up the client
GPU processing on your machine or CPU processing on your machine.
And the reason why I said it is because I was doing something when I did it with the stream with StreamYard for the conference. We didn't have these hiccups. I mean, and I'm not pointing fingers like how dare it. It's just like.
Amateurs.
Oh yeah,
we are amateurs.
We're seeing a theme here. JP.
I'm at 81% CPU load right now on the machine.
On your 65 core or 64 core
12
PC,
core,
right?
yeah, 12 core, 64 gig of RAM Mac Mini, and it's getting slapped left and right.
I can't. I mean, there's one thing we could try, which we could take a short break and try it out here in just a second. I'll send it to you in a minute, but continue, please.
Yeah,
and
no worries. No, it's good.
Better.
Yeah, and I'm just bringing it up to the people so that way they know it's like, hey, because there be dragons, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily a bad thing. It's just there be dragons. So come on, Visual Studio. Are you launching the other instance too? Good Lord. Yeah, because it is fighting for resources, I think. La la la. Anyway, so the thing I'm trying to do behind the scenes, I'm trying to launch the Visual Studio instance that has the WPF application. And the WPF application has, I kind of went a little bit crazy with it by extending it. It has essentially 4 text boxes. One of them shows the ID token, and we'll talk about the ID token here in a bit. One of them shows the access token. And then the other one shows like, here's the output of us calling the API using the access token. And the other one is essentially just metadata that we can add, you know, or just kind of echo of what's there. But anyway, so it's once eventually gets to around, I think it's not going to.
Your CPU was sitting at 100%, man.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oof. Good Lord. So what should we do? Should I try restarting it? I can stop sharing the screen and we can take it's a virtual machine, so it should be easily to just go out and in. Or what do you gents think?
Why don't we we'll take a quick break because it was past top of the hour anyway. Let's take a quick break and we'll see if we can't find a better way to get you in, and we'll be back in 5. So we're back, and hopefully we don't hit the kind of performance issues that we were hitting. So, so okay. So now, Javier, let's take a look at your client. See what we got.
Well, he's got no sound.
Now we can't hear him. What happened to him? His sound was working just a second ago. We were just talking to him. Where did it go? Oh no.
Oh, wait.
Oh no.
Did you press any mute buttons? He's laughing. He's laughing behind the scenes. I love it. You make us look like amateurs. Amateur hour at the 4 to 5, so we'll try to solve technical issues.
I guess we need to hire a consultant.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes,
now
what
you're
happened?
back. Okay.
So really, all I did is I brought up the sound thing on Mac, and it was like, oh, here's the sound, and I didn't do anything. I mean, just I promised. The only thing that I did when we were going to say, hey, let's go look at the client, I minimized the Safari window that I opened now to upload it in.
Oh.
So no one sneeze.
Okay.
Don't move. Don't breathe. Just let it run.
Now we all lost your audio again.
How about now?
We're
Now it's
good.
back.
So if you if you minimize Safari, which is what I'm doing, so that way I don't see everything. The audio goes mute.
Oh.
Oh. Okay.
Let me minimize mine. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're still there. I'm just like,
I think it's a privacy thing because the Safari on your phone does the same thing. I think it's one of the privacy things. So.
Things I've learned, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, it is what it is. So in here, as we wait for this app to load, I can probably just show the SAML down here. Essentially, it's a pretty basic stack panel using a nice Azure Blue. You see that? And so this has a combo box that allows you to select the different accounts that you can say. So use the currently signed in account, use the accounts known by Windows WAM, so web is a account manager, or use any Azure AD account. So this essentially can go through and enumerate this, the values of saying, hey, use whatever's logged in, show that, or do whatever. And then we have a sign-in button, a call API button, an identity button, a sign-out button, and all this stuff that's here.
So that's cool. So that Windows Account Manager, that can you, like if I'm like on an Azure AD joined box or something like that, I can use my Azure AD account. Now that is super cool.
Yes. So, and this is one of the things that you get out of the box with the Microsoft Identity client, the desktop pieces. So I was just like completely blown away. Yeah. So like I'll bring it up here. So kind of go. Come on. So if I go email and accounts, it literally just iterates through this right here. We'll show these ones.
Very cool. All right, awesome.
Yeah. So it's awesome because again, if you are using this already, if you already are actively creating desktop applications and you want to plug into it, it's just like, oh, you don't have to worry about onboarding it. Now, if I were to choose a different a different account that's in here, it's only going to be specific for the app. In other words, it's not going to get added to your WAM.
Right. Okay.
It's going to be separate, right? So you have choose your own adventure at that point, right?
Yep.
With it. But let me zoom down out of this so we can see it. It's because of the designer. Let's go 100%. So this is what the app looks like, right? So there's a drop down, there's a sign in, and there's API calls and whatever, just data for it. Okay. So there's several things that we need to do. So if I look at the Solution Explorer over here, one of the things that I wanted to do, and that I always like to do for some of the stuff, is I like to put everything that is static and reusable because we need to have it running in the background or on the background context, is create just a static class for it because just put it where it needs to be, right? So in here, I already took into liberty, just for simplicity, because I was afraid of it, of adding the Microsoft Identity client. And the client, by adding this, it actually adds the client desktop NuGet package. So they were already added to it. Okay. And as you can see, so the nice thing about it, on the web API one was Microsoft Identity.web, Microsoft Identity.client. If you get that wrong, then just read more docs, I guess. I don't know. So we have that there. And one of the things that I want to do here is essentially we want to build out the this create builder. So instead of you all of seeing me type code, I'm just gonna put this in here. All right. So, and I'm gonna step through it so that we can kind of through it. So get config value is really nothing more than a fancy wrapper around system.configuration manager app settings. So the application has persisted all the values, just like we did on the web API one, into its app.config. Right? And then I want to be able to cherry pick, hey, what is my instance? What is my tenant? What is my authority? In other words, the authority is like, where does the actual thing is going to go to? What am I actually going to call? The login that on Microsoft.com and so forth. And what's my client ID? Because I need to have all those items together, just like I would have in the API to say, hey, I am a client of the Microsoft Identity Cloud. All right? So that has it there. That is pretty much the bulk for essentially bootstrapping what's already there. All right?
Yep.
Now, the one thing we want to do in here too as well, and we can kind of take it baby steps. If you could look at the SAML, I have the click events, but they're not doing anything. So we can do something very similar. All right? So for the sign-in event, and we can kind of do it here and again, there's a lot of code. That's why I'm copying and pasting it. This is just sort of trying. Oh, nope, wrong one. My apologies. And the reason why there's a lot of code is because Windows forms, UIs, all the fun stuff that happens. Okay. Because it's a different world, right? It's just because there's actual threads running and it's managing threads and it's doing all those things. There's a thread UI and all those awesome things that are good for what does applications that really don't apply to web applications.
So to reiterate, the authentication code is not a lot. You don't need to write a lot of code to do authentication, but because you're running on a Windows environment, you need to manage your threads and what have you.
Right, exactly, yeah. So in here is this client application, that public client app, that is that static class we set up saying, hey, here's the client ID, here's the URL, here's the scopes, here's all the metadata that we care about. So that essentially is just has a builder. Hey, create me this instance of this thing. Got it. That's really all it does. So it's a wrapper. This will actually get the scopes. Remember the scopes that we added on the API? Essentially, that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be getting that here. And this is just kind of like, hey, reset the UI and whatever's there. That's just load thing that we could move somewhere else. I just kind of threw it in there. And then down here is line 37, how to sign in. This is a fun one because this is essentially saying, hey, which option in the dropdown did you pick?
Nice.
Yep.
Right. So it's like, hey, if I want the currently sign in one, cool. Use this operating system account. Get the default account that I selected. That I'm logged into. So in other words, if I type my desktop credentials to Microsoft account or whatever, it's going to be that default one, the one that I'm currently logged in. Number 2 is essentially use one of them, the one that's selected. Otherwise, just iterate through all the accounts and get the default. And then this it's cool because this line 50 app.get accounts, it actually is going to do and write the wrapper UI for you, so you can actually see the pop-up, and you can actually say which one do you want.
Nice.
So it's managing all that flow for you, because you got to think about it. We have to go authenticate against Microsoft account. Microsoft account it's a web application, so it literally what it does, it launches its own modal window running with WebView in it to actually do all the handling for you.
Yeah. Right.
And that's you don't have
That's a lot of work.
You had to write all that yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Whether you spun up IE or you did the same thing, you had to go and do that. This just does it for you out of the box.
Very nice.
Yeah. That's cool.
And then once you have that scope and that account that you can authenticate it, then you say, cool, now go acquire the token. Give me the token information.
Yep.
And then down here is just kind of wrapping around, and it's like, hey, something were to do it. There's something happened because something was configured. This is just, from line 659 to 82, it's just a ridiculous amount of error handling. Right? Just because it could, the wire could drop, right? Your CPU could spike to 100%. Anything is possible. So that's just sort of there for that. But technically, literally all you need is line 57.
And the big thing, the big one thing there would be if for some reason you need to do MFA, you haven't consented yet, that sort of thing. And so that try, silent, catch, interactive flow, we do that sort of everywhere, right? Like that's in web, it's in server side web, it's in client side web, everywhere. That's the main pattern.
Right.
So Sahil is asking, in this code, can we use primary refresh tokens to go and acquire an access token again?
You could. I'm not sure how you requested them on the Microsoft Identity.
It goes. It's going to go through WAM though. Like you're never going to interact with that PRT yourself. It's all going to go through
Correct.
WAM.
Yeah.
There you go.
So,
Sahil.
but you can actually request one, and then you can always get a refresh token and refresh it. Ask it to do that, and just using whatever API exposed it through there. Yeah, because this app right here, this line, that variable is literally that, just a reference to the thing we built up.
Yeah.
And it's doing under the context of that. So we have that here, and then this is just, hey, display the UI. Okay.
Yep.
So the reason why I wanted to do that is because then I can do this. I'm gonna shift over here. You can see my son actually took that picture a couple weeks ago when we were out in Colorado, so that's why
that's a beautiful background.
I've been keeping it up there. He's a way better. He's a snowboarder, and he's way actually all my kids are better at skiing than I am because they're kids. But he was like up on a double black diamond, so it was like, oh, this looks pretty.
Oh wow, yeah, so, that's pretty serious.
So yeah, that's 15-year-olds for you. They have no fear.
Exactly, kids have no fear, man. They don't know the consequences. What happens when you fall down and hurt, and then it takes you 3 months to recover.
Yes.
Yeah.
So same thing here. I'm now creating the show client. So we have the API and we have the client.
Yep.
Okay. So same thing. Supported accounts. Select both of these, and I'm gonna choose register. Now the reason why I do it here because it's simpler. Now, one of the things that we want to be able to do is we want to actually add a redirect URI. And this redirect URI, we want to tell it what kind of platform it is, right? So we can actually enable it part of the handshake, because since it's still doing OIDC flow between you and the identity provider, it still needs to know what the quote unquote callback is.
Yep.
Right. So by adding a platform, we can hit add a platform. We can come in here and select mobile and desktop application. So you can see Windows, WP, console, IoT, whatever.
The left WinForms and the WPF out.
Well, that's what it's all Windows now.
I see.
Marketing.
But UWP was there called out separately, so special.
As it should. No, I'm kidding. I've never done an UWP, so I am not an expert. I'm just like, I even struggle with, it's a universal Windows platform. I struggle with the TLA. Let me just go there. So in here, what we want to do is we want to be able to say, yep, we want to do the native client. All right. And we hit configure, because this is the redirect URI that it will use in part of the flow. And that's part of it. From here, what we want to do is we want to be able to use API permissions. And we want to be able to add is it here or is it expose an API?
No, it's API permissions.
API permissions. I couldn't remember where it was.
And then add the permission.
So, yep. So then we add a permission. And then here's where you can select. You want to use the Microsoft APIs. Do you have different APIs in your organization that you can use? You can have out here. Or do you want to use your own APIs that you configured? It's like, yeah, I have them 425 API. So I want to select it from here. And then, yep, I want the demo.read scope. So now I'm actually doing this. And the cool part about it is like delegated permissions. Your application needs access to an API as the sign-in user, or essentially is a, I would say, machine to machine or a client credential, right? Your application running as a background service, there is no user. I just want to be able to say app calling this, rather than Javier logged into app calling API. And the reason why I bring that up, because that essentially your mileage will vary depending on your application. like a console app or a cron job or anything else, there's no user logged in. You just want to be able to say, I need to just get a client credential token. That's essentially what it calls, right? I want to go get that so I can call the API rather than a user context involved in it.
Yep.
So, and the reason why I'm just going into that many details, like I know both of you understand that, but I'm not sure if everybody else on the street.
No, it's always good to reiterate, man.
Right.
We can't expect people that come to the show to have been in previous shows where we discuss these things.
Yep. Yeah. So at this point, we have everything set up on that. So let's go back to the overview, and let's literally copy paste. So now I can actually come over to the app. So I already have the login, the AD instance. It's login to Microsoft Online. And one of the things that it does in here is just like, hey, do you want, which tenant is it? Again, common, sign in to both Microsoft accounts or the GUID. So it's nice because it's just a canonical URL, so you can just change it to whatever you want. So in here, I want to put this. For my API scope, I need to come back over here. I need to come back over here. And where's my API permissions?
Yep.
And I need to, can I copy it here?
If you click on it, you get the full thing.
There we go. We need to copy this long, beautiful name that we all love. Come over here, and then we actually specify that scope. And the reason why I make fun of it because of, I get it, it's unique, but I just like, let's make it a little bit less verbose.
You mean too unique? About it. It's too unique. That's the problem.
Yes, exactly. Pretty much. That is the perfect way of putting it, Christos. It is too unique.
Too unique.
So that's what we have. So let me reiterate the pieces here. Is that we've actually gone through and added the client application. Right. So we have the code in here to parse that data to create the builder, and then in the window we have the ability to be able to say, yep, go actually use WAM to do this. Before I forget, there is actually, do this. You can actually use this, and I was trying to find documentation on it, and I just saw some of the samples where you can actually enable new features that are available there.
Okay.
For like older for like a Windows broker, you can do a bunch of other stuff, but you need to add this URI as a redirect URI. So we won't do it for this one. I just kind of wanted to kind of point that out in case people were like, "Where's your commented code out?" Because of that. So let's just run it. So at this point, plain Jane WPF application, launching it, doing all the stuff behind the scenes. And
let's see it in action.
Hey, sweet! There's that 401 I was
expecting to see.
Expecting that took like 6 days to get there. Well, you know what? I don't care. It works.
The pigeon has arrived.
That's right. It works. That's really. I just wanted to F5 and then just let that thing run behind the scenes because it doesn't do anything. It's adding no value whatsoever. So there's there, and then there's the WPF application.
Very nice.
Cool.
So let me select. I'm going to select the middle option because I don't want to use my actual Microsoft account that's tied to a bunch of other stuff. I have a demo Microsoft account. So I can click on it here, and I can actually hit sign in.
What will happen?
By the power of Grayskull.
It's glorious.
Very nice.
And the cool part about this is here. I'm not trying to go too crazy with it. Is that we do have the WAM accounts that are listed there, or you can choose your own adventure. Right? So it allows you to have those two.
Yeah.
And so for this one, I'm just going to choose what's already there. And obviously, because it's an OAuth flow, it's going to say, hey, Javier, you want to let this unverified app? Yeah, because it's unverified. We haven't added, I haven't prettied it up and done all this extra stuff behind the scenes. It's like, they want to get your basic profile. They want to do this. They want to access to the, essentially, the Show 425 API.
Yeah.
Right. So here's what's going to happen. It's like, yep, I'm all cool with that. I don't read ULS, so I'm just going to click yes.
Don't say that out loud.
I'm kidding. It's a good joke. It's a funny joke. So in here, because of it, the code had actually gone through and fetched, and I can show you here in the Windows.cs. We've gone through, and if I go display basic token info, what it does behind the scenes, we fetch the ID token and the access token.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we just decided to display it. So the cool part about this, I can actually come over here, open this, and we can use one of my favorite apps out there, jwt.ms.
And there will be changes coming to this website. So.
Oh, really? Sweet.
Yes.
Do you know people who work on it? I'm just kidding.
We have.
Do you have any insider info on this?
I have insider info, but I can't disclose. It's all NDA stuff.
That's right.
You'll see it when everybody else sees it. So sorry. I mean, if you're interested in NDA stuff, then you can join our NDA community. And you're an MVP, so you should be able to access that.
I will probably access it. And the reason why I love this is because it's so simple, right? It's just like, hey, here's a token. Yep. I want to be able to decode it and get those claims. So we'll, like a magic trick, there's nothing up my sleeves. The red is my header, the blue is my content, and then my green is my signature. Welcome to JSON Web Tokens, right? Pretty standard. But here's the data that we got from the ID token. So as we know, it's cool because it says this was issued by Azure AD, because it knows the issuer.
Yep.
Here's the subject for it. So that should represent essentially the application that is attached to it. And here's the name of the person, who requested and blah, blah, blah. Here's just metadata for it. Mm-hmm. If I were to copy paste the access token is a lot more fun because it actually has real data. It has real data, right? No, not real data, but it's just like the ID token is more like, hey, here's who it is.
ID token is now still discriminated, my friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's okay. It serves one purpose and it does a good job doing it, right? But this one, obviously, we have the audience, the expiration, issued at, not before, there's name preferred, all these extra data. But look, we have the scope of them with that read.
Exactly what we need for the API, right?
Right, because the API cares about that.
Yeah.
Right? Or could care about it. My API doesn't because it's just going to echo everything back.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just there. But the cool thing about it, if you click on this claims tab, it actually gives you all the details of what's actually there.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So yep. Yeah, because the fun part about this token, and I'm going to go on a quick aside here, the decoded token, when you look at the expiration, that is a Unix epoch time. So you have to do math to figure out what the actual expiration of the token is. I love this because this tells you in human readable time and in central time is like, this is how long your tokens last for, which should be in another hour.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than you trying to do math on all these different things, right? So anyway, so that's cool. That's there. And to kind of show you how it all works, let's bring up Postman, because a web API demo is never complete without Postman. So we'll wait until it shows up. You want to talk about actually apps that are faster? This Postman app is, once they actually wrote it to a Windows app compared to what it used to be, it's 1,000 times way more responsive than
Oh, cool.
Obviously not now because I said that.
Well, while it's coming up, we've only got about 30 seconds left on Microsoft Developer. So if you want to come and hang out with us while we wrap this up, then come on over to aka.ms /425 show or 425 show on Twitch, because we're going to have to, somebody's coming in after us on the developer channel. So we're going to get out of here on developer and disconnect, but we'll stay on 425 show for another 20 or 30 minutes to get this squared away. Yeah. And we hope to see you there, and we'll be back on Tuesday for everyone who's not coming over. So we'll hope to see you soon.
Come over.
Okay, we're off of developer now, so we're good. So we've got infinite time.
Perfect. So all good. So the one thing I wanted to show in here, where did you go? Nope, it's not there. Let me go with /identity, and I'll show you here in a second. Identity. I forgot a T. Authorization. I can pick bearer token because I have an access token, right? And I can come over here and literally copy paste that access token. So what am I doing in here is I'm saying I need to get a get. Remember this is the API that's running locally that's just going to echo my claims.
Yep.
I'm passing my authentication type as a bearer token, and there's the token. Whoop-de-doo, right? So I hit send. It's cool, but because behind the scenes, my API, it's actually so here's what's happening in the, as you saw the little, I wish we had the Jeopardy, again, going back to that thing.
Don't even talk about it. The copyright people will come and get us again.
That's right. So the cool part about this is that behind the scenes, what it did is my API is configured to say I am authenticated with, I'm authenticated with Microsoft Identity. So whenever it receives a token, it's literally phoning home to Microsoft Identity to say, is this token still valid? And it does that seamless for you. And the moment it knows that, yep, this token is still valid, great. Now let me go and take every single claim that I have in that token, and now that's part of my user context. So if I wanted to go find the actual claim for the scope, I can do, user.claims.first or default c.name equal SCP for scope, and it will actually get that value back out. So the one thing that you can see in here is that if we do rods, let's go pretty. There's a version, there's the issuer. There's literally all of those claims that were part of that token. That just literally get echoed.
And you'll notice too, like that one that's got like name identifier, for example, like some of that's what .NET does too. Once it consumes those claims, is it gives them new types, and that's the default. But of course, you can change those mappings. So there's some configuration stuff you can do to change those mappings if you don't like those names. But so much of the .NET like authorization pipelines and stuff are driven by those expected names. Yeah. So generally, we don't advise you change them unless you really, really need to.
And the thing about it, it's based on a scheme and a spec. So it's not like, let's just pick puppies as the name of the claim, right? It's just, there's actually, it's actually, there's a reason behind it, right? So, but cool. But anyway, you can scroll down and see all the other claims that you have in here. So the token's working, right? Because at that point you can use it and do whatever you need to.
It's not a fake token, people. It's a
because if you delete your token, you'll get a 401 and a www authenticate header, right?
Yep. So if I delete that here, or if I put in puppies, there it is.
Yep. And then in the headers, I think in the headers you also get back a www authenticate header, which tells you how to authenticate, or you should. Yep. So, it's just telling you bear, but yeah. Okay, cool.
Yep. But essentially is that it's IIS servers, ASP.NET. It's actually executing everything behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So
cool.
So it's cool because again, it's working the way it should work, right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yep. So that's the UI there. So let me stop this guy. Then we'll talk about the sign out. And the cool part about it is that I have. So let's actually make an API call to it. Because it's great because we just built the thing and it's like, hey, cool, there's a token. Whoop-de-doo, who cares, right? But it's actually, let's use that token to actually make the API call. And give me 1 second. The way we will do that is actually no. Let's before we do that, let's do something different. In this display token info, notice that I'm getting the access token and everything. Well, let's actually parse the token manually. And the way we can do that is again by copy and pasting this. System.identity model.jwt that tokens.jwt. That is its own separate NuGet package. System.identity model that tokens to JWT.
Yes, people, there's a NuGet package to parse your tokens. Do not do it like 70s using JSON objects.
Right. Well, the thing about it, because more often than not, when you see samples, it's just so like, I'm decoding this token. And don't get me wrong, JWT tokens are easy to decode, but why write all the code?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Why write all of it? So in here is what I'm doing is that essentially behind the scenes, I am going to go and actually let me kill this here.
And Bolt is saying if you are going to do it, don't verify the signature.
Do not verify the signature? or verify the signature.
Don't ever verify a signature on your own. Definitely.
Oh yes, correct.
Let
yes.
let a library. You don't want to do.
Right.
PSD guy
I
says
was
he
like,
stops
wait a minute,
writing code.
I was just like, what? Just whatever, YOLO. Whatever token you get on an email, just
Lift
put
your
it on
hands
your
off the
app. It's
keyboard.
so
Do
cool.
not touch the signature.
Yes. Yeah. I was gonna say, and it's funny because like back in the day, before going through like a third-party provider or validator for a token, it's like I used to use a lot of self-signed tokens, right? Which is perfectly fine because
What can go wrong?
Well, the thing about it is like if you know the secret, right, and you keep it that secret will never get spilled because it's just a signature, right? But I never manually validated it. I still use the library to validate it for me using my secret. So, but anyway, so this will display the token. And really what I did is I just created a couple extension methods. So if I go right click on it and I go to implementation, this is at this point using just a numerable of claims to essentially say, hey, give me that value of that claim. So I'm manually parsing the contents of the token. So if I go back to this says, yep, there's my ID token. Give me all the claims. And we'll talk about this code here in a second. Get me the name, give me the OID, give me the user identifier, and get me the issuer. So if I run this bad boy again, and I'm slowly filling in those text boxes that we had. That's essentially all I'm trying to do.
Yep.
Come on. La la la.
We're gonna start shipping a machine to everybody who's gonna come on the show. Like, all right,
Yeah,
pretty much.
here's the
that's
machine.
the plan.
Here's a 48 core monster. Use this to join the show.
Stream in a box.
Well,
Yeah,
if
there
you're
you
actually gonna, I was gonna say, if you are gonna switch though to Teams, you may need that 48 core machine. Because of the
snap.
Teams class.
Snap,
Shots
fire,
fired.
shots fired. God damn, I always get that the other way around.
So then I can
Yeah,
log
shots
in
fired.
here. Come on. So I was already authenticated, so obviously it knows to kind of flow through it. So in here, look at that. Boom.
Nice.
Name, identifier. So again, I'm instead of cherry picking and using JSON, it's like, no, they're claims. We're civilized. Let's use the right library to get that value back out, right?
Yep.
So we have that there. So
Okay.
cool.
So let's use it against your use it against your API. Yeah.
Perfect. So let's. Where the heck did I? Where were you? Didn't I have a button in here that actually calls the API?
Yeah, it was down just a little bit. Call API. It's right after the sign.
Call API button.
API.
The one that says call API button. Perfect. So
Just a guess.
Line and
random. So this is going to be handwritten code, pretty straightforward. What I did.
artisan code, right?
Yes, it's very.
Yes.
So one of the things that I did ahead of time, so again, just as a pattern, like I had the chat service and the SignalR thing I showed, is like this thing automatically goes. I wrapped all this stuff. So this requires the access token, which we will already have access to, right? It creates a request message with get for that identity endpoint, and it says, "Hey, now get me an HTTP client." It uses the API address from the config file. It sets it as that, and it says, "Oh, by the way, you need to set bearer auth for that access token."
Right.
So we're manually assembling that HTTP request.
Yes.
Make the call, get it, give me the value, and just return it as one big string. Okay. So if I come back to the CS, I can do var contents equals app service.
Is that a plural for content? Contents. Yeah, there is. Sorry, I need more tea. This morning.
API service.
Hey, I'm coffee free for 2 days, so don't
Don't judge
Yeah.
judge too hard.
I had a headache yesterday, so we're talking about the fact that I haven't had coffee for 2 days. So Hannah from our team was asking, so you didn't have any headaches? And lo and behold, day
Today.
2 was headaches, which was not fun.
Yep. So we'll do token, and since this is a sync API, I'll wait. And what the heck was it? What did I call it? Forgot the name of that value on that text box. It's results. Result text, yes. That text equal content. Oh, not content, string format, contents. All right, so let's YOLO, right? Again, let's run it again. Let's see.
Now show us your unit tests.
Yeah. I should have done unit tests around this, but it's kind of like it puts the lotion on the skin, or else it gets the hose again, right? Because it's just that tedious. And so it's funny you say about that unit test part is like trying to unit test OIDC flows and everything else is possible. It is just you're there for a while.
And we had a stream with our friend Jan that showed us how to do unit test things around Microsoft Identity.
I need to
Unfortunately, you have to use ROPC, which is not particularly fun.
Right.
Or recommended.
So poof, there it is. So now we got it, and I'm gonna say, oh crap, where did the button go?
Oh, where did our button go?
Where did the button should be there? Call API button. Oh, it's collapsed. You know what? I was trying to be clever and been like hiding and showing buttons because demo. So I'm just gonna say visibility, visible.
Okay.
I don't care. So call API button there. So we'll go through the same thing again, but at least the button will be there because I'm sure there's a state that's like, oh, you're not here. There's no button shown. Whatever.
Just do right-click view source code. Oh, I forgot.
Oh, that's right.
It's a desktop.
It's a desktop app.
It's a desktop app. There's no view source.
I was Christos added me to an extremely long thread, which is still going on, by the way, about the difference between
don't
YAML
mention it.
and
No.
YAML and XML and JSON, and the arguments have gotten very heady. Like people so every morning I wake up and I look at my phone and it says you have 38 new Twitter notifications, and they're all in that thread.
People are very passionate about that. I mean, it's hey, there you go, API call results.
Yep.
As you can
So
see.
there we go. We just called it. There's that
Cool.
same content, so it's there.
It's a pity
Nice.
it's not in YAML.
What was it? Hey, yo, dog, I hear you like YAML, so we're going to put some YAML in your SAML or your TAML.
Yep. And some JSON in between to make the sandwich look tasty.
Yeah. Alternate, you have YAML, SAML, and XAML. So with an X.
That's right.
This one.
Because
so that's
this is XAML, right? Like the XML for Windows UI stuff is
Right.
XAML, right? Yeah,
extensible application markup language. That's the only one I remember out of all of them. Maui, don't even ask me. XAML, it's because the cuts are just here from it for many years. But anyway, yeah, so we just called the API that way. But the cool thing that I wanted to show here, it was this, is that I had some code that I had commented out, and I was just waiting, and it's just a matter of time, not necessarily a matter of not showing it. So in here, we have another call that gets, remember that dummy roles controller that has roles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is going to be, I'm going to call them, I'm going to get them back as an array. And what I'm doing now is I'm actually adding extra claims. So I'm creating a claim list and I'm adding this role. Okay. So remember, JP, when you were talking about it, it's like how there's specific names that get added to a claim that the .NET runtime will know about them.
Yep.
One of the default ones is cleverly called role.
Yep.
So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm adding this claim to say, here's the roles. So behind the scenes, because once we get a JSON Web Token, it's going to be an array of roles. So it's going to say role, colon, left bracket, whatever, right? All the listing of all the claims that are there. So what I'm doing here is I'm behind the scenes, I'm actually creating the, calling this to get all the roles, adding the roles that we got back as the claims, and dumping everything into one big list. So let's aggregate it all, right? And then I have this method called set thread principal. So this goes back into the original conversation: is what the heck does set claim principal actually means? It means this. So I have the that copy pasted the wrong thing, and again I'll paste it and I'll go through the context. So what I am doing here is we're getting the claims. I'm creating a claims identity. Every principal requires an identity, right? Claims principal can have multiple identities, so you can cherry pick for whenever you have them there. This one we don't care because it's a demo, right? So we're saying here are the claims for that identity. The authentication source is AAD because it is. That's where we came from, right? The name is, if I were to go user.identity.name, we've written code like this in ASP.NET forever, right?
Yep.
At user.identity.name, that's the name of the claim that I want to fetch out of this, the name claim. As you can see, will be whatever value that I get out of there. And by the way, the role claim, so if someone were to say user.isInRole, anything that is part of the role claim will be actually added to that. So
Okay.
it will then, the code will just magically work for you, because we're basically telling it, here's your name claim and here's your role claim.
Okay.
So we create the identity, create the principal, and guess what? App domain, that current domain, that set thread principal. So any thread that gets created by this current app domain will have this principal attached to it as its context.
So then that way, when I go to call an API, I can get the claim set off of the user, just like if I was or if I wanted to look at something about the user or whatever, that claim set is going to be available in all of those downstream threads, just like if I'm in a controller in an MVC app or something, right?
Yep, exactly.
That's cool.
And the reason why I like, go ahead, sorry.
Well, so I guess my other question then would be, so like in a normal web app, like an MVC web app or whatever, things like the authorization tag, I mean, they physically prevent those views or controllers from being rendered and sent down to the client, right? But on a desktop app, I mean, you really can't rely on that. Like, maybe, your API doesn't return any data, but I mean, there really should never be sensitive data in here, right? Because it's a desktop app. Somebody can decompile it or whatever, right?
Correct. Yep. Now, there is a old school legacy attribute. Well, I'll use the word legacy because it's been there since like the dawn of time or dawn of .NET. And it is the principal permission attribute.
Yeah. Okay.
And the principal permission attribute is something you can apply anywhere in any .NET code. Doesn't have to do web or anything, where we're literally able to go and check the current principal you have attached to it and see, hey, for example, I need the role 1, right? You can apply it to a class, and if you don't have that permission, it will not create an instance of that class.
No, that's neat. That's interesting.
And it's crazy because it actually is one of those few classes and types in the BCL that actually goes into the CLR.
Yeah.
Because the CLR is the thing creating the object. It's not just C# code, right? That's the thing we forget about. It's like, oh, we just put stuff in here, but it's like the CLR is just creating all these different things. So essentially, it's the CLR reaching to your .NET code for the thread context to bring it back in and see you can actually execute that chunk of code. And that's the principal permissions attribute. I wanted to add it, but I just ran out of time.
So here's one for you. Role claims or scopes. When should I use each one in my API?
Role claims or scopes? That is a good question. Typically, what I do is that the roles, I don't like using roles in an API because essentially you're talking about permissions or sets of permissions.
Right.
Because to me a role essentially is I equate it to a set of permissions. So a scope is the equivalent of that. I'd rather say here's the scope that I have, so then I can get the fine granular permissions associated to that scope.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that way good, sir.
I mean, your scopes are essentially it's sort of the set of data that you want, or the set of data and operations, right, that you want to allow or deny but particularly from that perspective of a third-party app is going to request these. Like some other application is going to be requesting this scope for a user, right? And it's very much like a user-centric thing. But that's more about what a client application can do rather than what the user themselves can do. Because the user's roles, I mean, they're going to dictate all sorts of things regardless of the client they're using, regardless of how they're accessing the data or whatever, right? Like, ideally. And yes, I think there's definitely a difference in the usage for them.
I mean, a good example of that is like one of the clients that I mentioned that I'm working with right now is like we're going to be using scopes to be able to say, can I call this API? Right? Can I call the get contract API? But we're going to be using permissions attached at the user level from that token to be able to say, can I actually view contract 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yeah. So what? I don't even know how to pronounce it. DOML, D0M3L. Who knows, right? The question of rendering UX. Is that's something I use a role or a scope for, and I wouldn't necessarily see a good usage for a scope for rendering a specific part of UI, right? It feels very much more of a role-based decision to make, right?
Yep. And honestly, so this is why to me, is like the whole concept, and maybe I've just been, I was going to say tainted by this for many years, is like typically when we say roles, we think of a Windows group because that's essentially the way it came from, right? Even in ASP.NET, it was like, that isn't role. Oh, you're the administrator role. Well, that's a Windows group or whatever, right? So that's why I always say, it's like, don't think about roles. Think of roles as a set of permissions.
Yeah.
Right? Because essentially what would happen, because we've all done this. It's like, oh, I need an administrator. An administrator can do these 6 things. And then we're like, oh, but it needs to do one more thing. But not all of them need to do that. Just JP needs to do this extra thing along as an administrator. So what the heck do? You create another role.
Yeah.
To be specific for that. And now your code is all completely, your code is all completely checking on that chunk of code. It's like, if isn't role foo or isn't role JSP special role.
Yeah.
Right? As compared to saying, it's like, hey, we're going to just add these granular permissions, right? So that we can say, hey, you need to have permissions X, Y, and Z to do this specific thing. Oh, you have this extra level permission that now makes you be able to hit the delete button, to delete the oasis, essentially, or whatever. Then at that point, that's an extra permission you add. And that permission could be individually assigned to you.
Right.
Rather than creating a brand new role that probably will be badly documented. And someone will get access randomly because it's like, oh, but you said administrator, we had a 2 on it, so I just dropped the 2, and I figured it's the same role, right?
Right.
Because, and the reason why I said it is because it's happened. It's happened in places where I worked before, where it's like, oh, but we can just create this, and then your Active Directory or whatever your directory structure where you're storing these groups, again because groups essentially become roles, just gets littered with all this extra stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've tried very hard to drive people away from using groups as roles, but of course, when you're coming from like on-prem AD, they are almost they are almost directly correlated in anybody's brain who's used AD on-prem, and then of course they get to Azure AD, or we say, well, probably don't want to use a group here. You want to use a role, and then of course there's the whole question of, well, why would I do this? But of course, those roles are application scoped, and groups are most definitely not, right? So, okay, now we have another one, right? What's the difference between
I'm going to be typing, so and as we do that, go ahead.
What's the difference between a scope and a permission?
A scope and a permission. So, the way I usually try to say it is that a scope, essentially, just like a role, is a set of permissions that you can have for that the user is requesting for you.
Yeah.
Right. And a permission is a granular thing. Read, write, delete. right? As compared to it's like, hey, a scope of like be able to say, hey, I want to be able to have the scope for like in GitHub. It's a good. I mean, I love the way their UI is. It's phenomenal for that sort of stuff, where you can actually say, hey, here's all of my here's the scopes that I care about, or I can cherry pick from there. Here, I don't want to lose the audio here. Let me switch to GitHub quick so I can kind of bring it, because I think they did it wonderfully. And it's cool. We can show GitHub because we're all part of the one big happy family, right? So it's cool. So I can come in here and I can create a personal access token, right? I can create and generate a new token, and of course, because it wants that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a scope or a role, they both. Well, two things. First, the application is required for enforcing them.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
The API that's going to receive it's going to have to look at that scope and say, okay, what does this allow? What does the scope allow the user to do? Does it let them read only? Does it let them read write? What scope of of entities, for example, right? Like maybe I can only read your tweets, or I can only read your repos, right? And I can't do any other work on them, or maybe I can write a package, right? And ultimately, the API has to enforce that. And then on the roles side, I mean, the roles are really about. It's really more of like a collection of. I don't even want to necessarily call it permission per se, because that muddies the water when we're looking at scopes. Right. But it's more like a collection of. It's what matters within an application that you are allowed to do, and it tends to be, and I don't want to say that's always the case, but it tends to be a more UI focused thing. So if I'm in a website, my role may dictate you can or cannot do these things, but it is local to that application, right? Like that role doesn't matter in a downstream API that I'm calling, because it's a downstream API. But the scopes that I need are really going to drive what I'm allowed, what the client application that's calling that on my behalf is allowed to do, because I can do anything on my own account, right? Mm-hmm. So somebody just being able to authenticate as me, well, they can read my account, write my account. Like if they get my Microsoft account, they can see my email, they can see my Xbox stuff, whatever. Right. And a scope is a way for me to say, I want to do that. I want to allow certain permissions, but I don't want to give away the whole farm, right? Correct. And but it's very much driven by that application. The calling application, the client application, whereas the roles are more about what can you do once you are within this application, right?
Right. Yep. And not only that is when you actually even select the scopes, like if you want to change the scopes, you may have to sometimes remove access to the application. So you want to add one or remove one, you're going to have to go and reassure it again, because you went through that logical. That consent. Remember when it was saying, hey, it's going to do this and this. Are you cool with that? Great. Well, then this application has the right to do that. If I wanted to do something extra, I sometimes have to remove that registration attached to my account to be able to add extra stuff to it.
Yeah, like you either have to go back through consent, which has always been and the more recent libraries make it easier to sort of reprompt and say, I need you to either consent again, or we tried to get a token with this scope, but we can't because you haven't consented yet. So the newer libraries are better, like MSAL and the identity.web. Those libraries are much better at recognizing that that's happened and then saying, hey, user, please, you need to go consent to this net new permission. Because it wasn't on there when you originally consented. But yeah, there are definitely cases where you'd have to go and remove all consent, if you don't want that app to have access to your stuff anymore. Because once you've said cool, then it's got it forever.
And the reason why I bring that up, because more often the path of least resistance is like deleted and added again, because making it smart, like you said, MSAL and everything else, that takes work, right?
That's true.
To do that.
That's true.
So it's easier to we'll just shut it off and turn it back on, because we don't have time, quote unquote, to do it more elegantly, even though we do, right? But anyway, this is why I always use this as an example of the scopes. Like it's just very specific, right? Right. And I just like the UI. That's why I always go back to GitHub. It's like it's simple. It works great. And everybody knows what GitHub is, so it's not like you have to explain what it's actually trying to do behind the scenes. So there's that. So the one thing I was wanting to do over here is that we've all written code like this, that current thread, or thread that current principal, that identity, that name. That's going to get me the name. And just to be on the safe side, we're going to do this. Right?
Null checks.
Yep. Message box that show. I'm going to show my name.
Okay.
Right? And then we can do that there, and we can do something like this. Var is actually has role, not half, has role 1 equal thread that current principal that is in role 1. Right? And then we can do something like, that's why it's complaining, because I was in the wrong tab, on the wrong space. And I can do message box that show and say has role 1, does not have.
Can you scroll up just a little bit, because your code's behind your head?
Yep. Let me 1 second. How about that?
All right.
So so basic stuff that we added in here. Has role 1. What the heck?
Does that need to be like a has value, because it's nullable?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yep, that's what it was. Get default or value. We'll just go with that. There we go. Pretty cool.
What's the,
right? So
what's the default? What's the default for a nullable bool? Is it true? I thought it was false, but I don't remember.
I think it is false.
Yeah, okay,
because
good.
the default type for a bool is always false.
Yeah, because that would be bad if the default was true when we're checking roles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because it's funny you said that, because I always think about it. It's like, what does the default keyword when I do for this type return? Okay, it's got to be the same one. Now, don't ask
Bolt
me
says,
when my anniversary is, but
Bolt says thanks for using an intermediary variable. It's so simple, but it's such a good practice. You know, I think about that. I remember I had a guy years and years ago used to do code reviews for me, and he would absolutely beat everybody up on allocations all the time, and I got like super terrified of ever allocating variables unless I absolutely knew I was going to need it. And I mean, the compilers, they do all the hard work now of figuring out what needs to be allocated, what doesn't. But whew, man, it was rough. Yeah,
making your code unreadable just to save allocations when the compiler will optimize anyway.
Well, they certainly do now. I mean, and I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, maybe they weren't as smart back then. I don't know, but yeah.
I think 10 years ago, we're still able to write a lot more verbose code and the compiler would optimize.
Right.
20 years ago, maybe not. But if you were writing C++ games with 20 bits available to you for memory, then yes, you need to be tight.
Cool. So we got your name.
Got my name, and then has role 1.
You're in role 1. Nice. Very nice. It's awesome.
Sweet.
Because it's just tied to this whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So we called your API.
Yep.
We called your API. We got your roles. We assigned your roles to your principal, and then now we can use the user, like that sort of static user object at any point, the one that's provided by the framework, just like we can in a web app.
Correct.
That's awesome. I love it.
And it all works.
Yeah, that's killer.
So, yeah. And it's funny because a lot of people haven't taken this pattern, right? Which is fine. It's just one of those, like, at this point, again, I'm a simple folk. So if I can make the pattern work the same way as I do on the web, why wouldn't I? But yeah, that's how simple it can be. You can also create your own custom principal if you want, and whatever. That's a different story for a different day. But I figured this thing is just like, just get the roles, get the thing, send it back.
Well, that's the thing too. Is like so I remember I want to say it was .NET 4, but it may have been 4.5. And that was when claims principle became almost sort of the base for all the other principles. So a Windows principle derives from claims principle now, and a forms principle derives from claims principle, and it makes it so much easier to take an app across different systems or to use different identity providers with the same app, because now you've almost always got a claims principle if you've got a user that's signed in, and it just makes it so much easier to work with.
So the one, where are you? Is it? I think it's principle. Set principle policy. There's another one, line 151 that I'm adding here.
Ah, cool. Okay.
You
What
can
can it
say.
do?
You can say what kind of principle. I don't want no principle. I want an authenticated principle. Or I want a Windows principle.
Yeah. Cool.
So by default, you can say, hey, you can start authenticated via the Windows user. So typically you would say this. Right, so I want, and let me just kind of do a new line here so people can see it. So this will be the start of is hey, the set principle policy will be this. It's a Windows principle.
Yeah.
Then after that, so that way that will be done with the application first execute. Then after that, you can say, hey, that's cool, but I actually just want to be able to set the thread principle after I set it from whatever data that I got. And that's at the app domain level.
It's awesome. App domain.
So again, yep. Pick your own adventure at that point.
Yeah. don't do your own authentication adventure.
No, do not. Do not.
Yes. Yeah, we feel like we have to say it quite a bit, but yeah, don't do your own authentication adventure. I mean, use ASP.NET Identity, use something that exists, use anything except for just checking usernames and passwords and salting them yourselves and doing all that kind of work. So, yeah. Well, Javier, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, sorry for the tech issues. Again, we'll blame that on the Mac. Not really. I mean, at this point, we're beating up OBS Ninja, but I think it's just Mac. And then
no, it's all good. Well, we're gonna have to figure some alternatives. At least have some alternatives available so that we don't hit it again. But I think for the most part though, it was pretty good. We had a little bit of a longer break in the middle, but that's all good. But this has been great. And then you've got links, so we're gonna get a blog post out with all the links to this code and to your firm and to your GitHub with all the other cool stuff you get to work on. Be sure to follow Javier on Twitter. Be sure to join us in Discord. And like we said at the beginning, if you are an Okta or an Auth0 customer, and or maybe not even a customer, just somebody who's used them, if you've got opinions or thoughts on the acquisition, I'd love to hear them. So please feel free to send them to us at 425show@microsoft.com, or join the Discord. You can figure out the Discord with Bang Discord. You can get the join link in the chat. We are going to be back on Tuesday with Lisa from Dell, who's going to talk to us about hybrid cloud, Azure Stack, the importance of identity when it comes to hybrid cloud in particular. I think it's going to be a really cool conversation. So we're going to do that on Tuesday.
Oh wow! Don't forget MS Learn, right? We have Learn at 8 a.m. Pacific.
Yep. So at 8 a.m. we're going to start talking about. We're going to jump in and talk about getting your tenant stood up. So if you want to create an Azure AD tenant, you want to start working on it, we're going to talk about that, app registrations, all sorts of fun stuff. So that'll be 8 a.m. PT on Tuesday. And yeah, I think that's it. That's it for us for today. Let's find somebody to go hang out with for the rest of the afternoon. Let's see, who are we going to
Our
raid?
friend Instafluff is currently coding.
Let's go see what Instafluff is doing.
Yeah.
I can't do it again. Every time we try to raid him, maybe we're not allowed.
Oh.
How about Ed Charbonneau?
Yes.
Oh yeah, Mr. Charbonneau is great.
Yeah, let's go over to Ed. So hey everybody, have a great weekend. Javier, as always, thank you. This was a blast.
Thank you. Thank you for having
hang out with us.
Yeah.
And we're gonna get out of here and go see what our friend Ed is up to. So let's see. Oh no. Okay. So hey. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay warm, stay safe, stay dry, and we'll see you next week. Bye.